Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is semantics, the language that we use to communicate our ideas and express our experience and their power to shape that very experience. But before we get started, let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing every cell, every organ, bringing vital life energy throughout your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating all your cells, electrifying and energizing all your molecules and electrons, and connecting you with the world beyond. And as you exhale any remaining stress, tension, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Very softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the tickling and the tingling and that wonderful sensation, and allow yourselves to come present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So it's a pleasure to be with you. It always is. And I just want to thank you so much for the love and support that you've shared with me over the past several days in me navigating Maggie having flown away. She's still not back. I don't know if she will be, but I am moving from the very profound grief and despair that I was feeling into a more peaceful place to be able to allow the unfolding of what unfolds. So I want to talk about semantics today. And this has been a topic that's up for me for a little bit, actually, from Friday. I was intending to talk about that on Monday. So now we get to talk about it today. Interestingly, a friend texted me to write to ask me if Maggie was back. And I responded, instead of saying no, I responded by saying not yet. And that's an example of the power of semantics, because the message with not yet is she's coming back. And the message with no is just flat no, she's not back. And so maybe the not yet is projecting. However, we are meaning-making machines. And the language that we use is not only representative of our experience, but it shapes our experience. And it becomes a very important issue when language is crafted in such a way that it mitigates the truth of something, where it has an opportunity to misdirect, shall we say. Or for instance, when we talk about meat, eating meat, and we talk about harvesting the meat, harvesting the chicken or the beef or whatever, that's a very different experience, or it creates a very different experience than when we say slaughtering the chickens or the cows, right? Or butchering or killing. Harvesting is a much gentler word, a word that is easier on our sensibilities rather than really addressing the fact that in order for us to eat meat, we must kill animals, right? So that if we're sanitizing the language, when we talk about death, when we talk about someone passing versus someone died, even that sensibility feels very different, because we have different nuances of meaning that we apply to language. And I think that we can obfuscate truth in the language that we use very easily. I mean, we can look at a whole bunch of companies that are greenwashing through their language, talking about natural this or wholesome that, or whole food, or even gluten-free. This is just so funny. When we think about like it's like putting a sticker of gluten-free on eggs. Eggs are always and have always been gluten-free, right? But if we put a sticker of gluten-free on the eggs, maybe it makes it seem as though we're giving some added attention to that product somehow. It's very interesting how these dynamics play out. So I'm wondering if you guys are here with me, because I haven't heard from anybody yet this morning. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So I'm thinking that maybe there's a problem with our connection. I'm hoping that's not the case. But I'm not entirely certain. It looks like we should be in good shape here, but if you don't mind, if you're out there, maybe you could post something real quick in the chat so I know that we're actually live. Anyway, so the thing that brought this semantic argument to mind is that I was actually in a conversation where we were talking about the semantics of promoting something, and I'll tell you what it is in a minute. And the response was, well, that's a semantic argument. And I just want to bring to mind the fact that semantic arguments are not something to be dismissed. Something is, I don't believe when you say, well, it's just a semantic argument, or that's just semantics. If we say that, it's actually a denial of the power of our language to influence experience. And so here was the conversation. I have a friend who is brilliant and who is creating some inspiring and wonderful initiatives, particularly related to our environment and our impact on the environment, and has been talking about creating net positive impact. And rather than neutralizing our impact, rather than minimizing our negative impact, creating positive impact. And I think that this is a laudable concept. Certainly right now, there are so many things we need to do to create a positive impact in the world. The thing is, with that languaging in and of itself, it assumes that we can define what positive is, right? And that's a big deal, because we might consider that an action we're taking is positive, but or net positive, but without a bigger broader view, perhaps that's not the case. For example, we might consider that making solar roadways is a net positive impact. But the thing is, we're going from a supposition that roadways are part of how things are best served. How, like, our roadways at all, whether they're solar or made of bioepoxy or dirt, are roadways net positive, right? Or positive impact, so then the question of net positive comes into play. So what does that mean? Ideally, it means taking whatever negative impacts there are for something and offsetting them in some way, to create a net positive. Okay, so for instance, that's something that happens with carbon credits. So with carbon credits, companies that pollute are able to buy these credits from other companies or organizations that are creating a carbon positive, or it's hard to say positive or negative, but a positive impact regarding carbon. So maybe a company that's planting lots of trees to offset the negative impact of what the pollution is doing, right? So the thing that we're looking at is we're creating an equation where we're saying, okay, there's this bad thing here happening, and there's this good thing over here, and this good thing balances or maybe even exceeds the bad from the first thing. And so here's the brilliant concept of my friend Dirk Christoph, and that is the positive impact drive. And the idea here is for every mile or every number of miles that we drive, to essentially calculate the impact of that on the environment, and then offset that by planting trees or by doing any number of other positive sorts of environmentally positive actions to counterbalance, right? And it's brilliant, it's brilliant to be having people be able to be, first of all, conscious of their impact on the environment, and secondly, to have those people be contributing to mitigate that negative impact, right? But and this is, we had this big debate and are still engaged in this big semantic argument by calling it a positive impact drive, and by setting it up in a way to say that the more you drive, the more you help the environment, because there's more of this mitigation happening, to me is sort of a bit of a misdirection. And it is a way of saying, hey, we can save the world by driving. And that's so not true, right? Because driving in and of itself has an impact on the environment. The roads have an impact. The production of cars have an impact. And regardless of how much offset we do, it's not our actual driving that is helping to combat the negative impact of the cars, it's that we're creating this association, we're creating this offset. So my concern in that conversation is that people will feel like, okay, I can drive as much as I want, I can have a fossil fuel car, and it's all good, and the more I drive, the better things are going to be. Where, you know, there's like a false equivalency there. And so I'm great with this brilliant idea to correlate offsets with our actions, so that we all are individually responsible. And I think it's important to call it what it is, rather than saying, you know, the more I drive, the more I'm helping the environment. You know, so I'm just going to drive more and more. It's not really quite where we want to be headed. And so I'm thinking so much lately about the structure, the underlying structure, the underlying paradigms that we live from, that we operate from. And how important it is to be vigilant and conscious in our languaging of things. One of the big things that I see as the underpinnings of our of the destructiveness of our culture is in our language that is elevating concepts of more. More is better, you know, bigger is better. What have you done lately? You know, it's more, more, more. I want to produce more. I want to be more efficient. I want to be more productive. All of these more kinds of ideas that need to shift, because we can't be in an endless cycle of more on a finite planet, right? Where we have finite resources, and where even just our own personal energy, you know, to be driving our value, our individual value based on our production, you know, like what have you done lately again? So I want you to know, if you're putting anything in the chat, I'm not seeing it. Please don't feel slighted if I'm not responding. It's because I don't see any messages. I checked Facebook. It looks like we are live on Facebook, and it looks like we're live on Restream, but maybe something's happening with the ability to see the messages. So I apologize for that. Hopefully I'll get a chance to look at them afterwards and maybe respond. So when we also, I think we were talking about emotion. I think it was yesterday, where we would say, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm hungry, I'm excited, finally. Awesome, Elaine, thank you. So Elaine says, all is well. Great, I appreciate it. So I know that things are working. Thank you. So when we say things like that, it's so routine, right? To say, I am happy, I am sad. But rather than I'm feeling happy or I'm feeling sad. But that little shift is an experiential shift. When we say I'm feeling sad, there's an I there, there's a presence, there's the recognition of the beingness that we are, or the beingness that we are that's beyond experience. You know, I am feeling sad versus I am sad. So when I become sad, when I am sad, I lose myself in that. versus when I say I'm feeling sad, then I know that there's a need that's bigger than the sadness. And so Elaine says, not for me, I only speak from truth. Well, Elaine, I appreciate that. And I think that's awesome that that's your experience. And I'm here to say that I believe that truth is a subjective perception, and on many, many, many levels. And you speak from your truth, and that, that's something that takes courage in and of itself. Thank you, Elaine. Yeah, like we all, if we're endeavoring to speak from our truth. Good morning, Andrea. Thank you so much for being here. And Elaine, thank you for being here always. And all of you who are here and listening. I think we get to look at our language, because our language is the sea that we swim in. It is the context for our experience. And not only can we use it to reflect our experience or to define our experience, but our language also defines that experience itself. So I might be trying to communicate with you how I am thinking or feeling, and the words that are used in our communications also shape experience. Good morning, Grace Isis. Thank you so much for being here. We're talking about semantics this morning, and the words that we use to represent our experience, and as well as the way that words shape our experience. So an example of the way that words shape our experience is in reframing. There's radical transformation that can occur for someone when you think about something differently, right? So Elaine says, I don't debate truth. It's an individual perception. Exactly. And all is allowed to perceive in their own way. I honor all life expressions. So I thank you for that, Elaine, because for sure, truth is an individual perception. We may say that there are some objects all agree on, and that may or may not make those objective facts true. So at one point, and I'm putting objective in air quotes, at one point it was an objective fact that the world was flat, and now it no longer is the objective fact. Now the objective fact is that the world is round, and or some variation around that. And Elaine says, yes, no judgment needed. Exactly. It's interesting, again, with the when we get into the realm of words, I'm always fascinated and taken by words. I find myself very curious and in moments of wonder around words and how we paint our perceptions in words. And when we talk about past and future, when we talk about reality, that's a great word, right? Well, the reality is, what is that? What is that we're talking about? And what is it that makes it real? And well, there are objective facts, there's research studies, there's, all of these conversations that can shape our perception. So when we talk about love, for instance, what does that mean? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? I remember in college, I took a philosophy course, and the philosophy course was really looking at what's the nature of reality. And it became so completely clear to me at that time how our own experiences are so subjective. And what I was experiencing is that there was a futility in even trying to communicate across the chasm of perception, my perception being unique to me, your perception being unique to you. Just finding that trying to communicate it at that time felt like a completely futile endeavor. And I stopped talking. I just stopped being able to talk for, I don't know what period of time it was, but it was like I would start a conversation, and then it was just like, and that was the end of it. And I just I couldn't find my way past that. And it was a deep, deep, deep isolation and despair. In some respects, it was very, very insular, very, very, very much in my head. And then I took a Theosophy course, and that enabled me to recognize that our communication was that the intention of our communication is the heart of it. So that in connecting, again, from the head to the heart, we talk about this all the time, right? But from moving from the head to the heart, connecting with the intention of the communication, that was a way that I could come back into connection with other human beings and with the world. And it's really interesting because now the head and heart conversation is very, very common conversation. We have a more innate awareness of that, but this was a long, long time ago, and it wasn't primary, like a foundational conversation. And it's so interesting to me that now, I haven't thought of this in quite some time, but it's very interesting to me to be looking back on that and recognizing how strange it is to have not been able to be present to that obvious resolution, right? I got so caught up in the philosophy of, like the reality and what is reality, and so caught up in my head that I became disconnected from myself. And so I know that although words are very important, the words that we use have an impact, I also recognize that most of our communication, I believe it's something over 90%, or at least over 85% of our communication, is not through our words, but through our tonality, through our demeanor, through our intention. I still believe that the words that we use are really important, particularly when we're trying to reshape the foundational orientation of a culture. So like moving from the notion of surviving to thriving, to be making the shift, for instance, good morning, Kristen. So glad to have you here with us to make the shift from the notion of survival to the notion of thriving. It's a whole different context. It's a whole different container for possibility. And so I invite you today to look at and be aware of, be cognizant of the words that you use, and even just for a brief period of time, take the opportunity to look at different words. There's such a thing, or such a term as transformational vocabulary. So to move from the word, the problem is, to the challenges, because a lot of us are really up for the challenge, but problems, who wants to, some people thrive on problem solving, but there's a different tenor to challenge than there is to problem, right? And it stirs different emotions, it stirs different motivations, it stirs a different foundation and trajectory. So what just popped into my mind is the languaging of the title of a course that I took, which I think is so brilliant. And it was called Leading from the Emerging Future. And I love that because it sparks such possibility. It's an invitation into the unknown, and recognizing that we can be enfolding ourselves in that unknown and still generate leadership. It's just so cool. So Dido, good morning. So good to have you here. Dido says, I do believe that words help create our worlds, and our worlds help create our words. Choosing our words with awareness is key. 100% Dido. I couldn't agree with you more. And when this is triggered a lot over the past few days, feeling deep sadness over Maggie not being here with me now, or then, and saying I'm bereft versus I'm feeling deep sadness, or which I saw myself saying these things. It's very different when we can recognize that we are not our feelings. We are not our thoughts. We are not our beliefs. We have them, we hold them, we feel them. Grace Isis says, an important aspect on our journey for ourselves and others to move in the world. Thank you, Mira. Thank you, Grace Isis. So yes, I know that we have the ability to recreate our world, and we can use words as part of that collaborative venture. So it's the world, we interface with the world on many levels of experience, and language is one of them. I mean, we've all heard the story about the many names for snow in the language of Eskimos, for example. And whereas we typically have just a couple. And so there are nuances of perception when we give name to things. It can both expand as well as limit our perception. Oftentimes by naming something, we no longer pay attention to it. We categorize it. But in other cases, when we make distinctions between things, maybe by naming, or when we make these distinctions, it can expand our perception. Like when we have a multitude of names for things that appear to have a color blue. Like there's a vast spectrum of blues, for instance. And the more we make those distinctions, the broader our perception can be, our awareness of our perception. So maybe words are a collaborative dynamic between our experience and our awareness, because we can be experiencing things that are not conscious in our awareness. And so maybe words help to bring those things more conscious. Anyway, I love playing with words and what we can create with them. And I invite you to play it in this very, very vast playground. There's such room for creativity and expression and discovery as we explore language. So I think that's it for today. I just want to say thank you for all the support and the love and your presence here and your engagement in these conversations. And I really, really feel your love. So I'm so grateful. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network. And I'm sending you so, 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 so much love. Thank you. Until next time.